In the heart of a cold, dark forest, there lived a wolf named Eris. Eris was not the biggest wolf. He was not the fastest. But he was the most generous. Every single hunt, no matter how long it took, no matter how tired his legs were, no matter how empty his stomach felt, Eris always shared. "There is enough for everyone," he would say. And the others smiled. They ate well. They slept warm. Eris went to bed hungry more nights than he could count. But he told himself it was fine. This is what a good wolf does. Winter came early that year. The snow was deep. The forest was silent. Prey was scared. For 3 days, Ares hunted alone. No one offered to help. No one asked how he was doing. The others stayed in their dens, warm, resting, waiting. On the 4th day, cold and exhausted, Ares finally caught a rabbit. It was small, barely enough for one. He sat down in the snow, breathing hard, looking at what 3 days of work had given him. Then he heard footsteps. 1, 2, 3 wolves appeared from between the trees. Their eyes went straight to the rabbit. Their tails wagged slowly. "Ares, good to see you, brother." The largest one smiled. "Looks like you had a good hunt." Ares looked at them. He recognized every face. These were the same wolves who had eaten from his hunts for years. The same ones who laughed around the fire he built. The same ones who had disappeared when the snow came. "Share?" the second wolf asked. The word easy, casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ares was quiet for a long moment. Not angry, not bitter, just clear. "When I was starving, where were you? When I was hunting in the cold for 4 days, where were you? You did not come to help, but you came to eat." He looked at each of them, one by one. Then he spoke, calmly, without rage. "Where were you when I was hunting?" No one answered. The wind moved through the trees. Snow fell between them. Ares picked up the rabbit, turned around, and walked back to his den alone. That night, he ate slowly, every bite small, every bite his. It was the smallest meal he had eaten in months. But something felt different. His body was still cold. His portion was still small. Yet for the first time in a long time, he felt full. Not in his stomach, in his chest. He did not stop being generous after that night, but he learned the difference between two things that look the same, but feel completely different. Generosity is something you give freely, from a full heart, expecting nothing. Being used is something that wears the mask of generosity, but slowly hollows you out from the inside. Ares had spent years confusing one for the other. He never made that mistake again. He learned, giving is beautiful, but giving to those who only appear when there is something to take, that is not kindness. That is just a habit you need to break.